Hello ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, I have a brand new ranking for you all, as I am going to be ranking all 11 of the Fast and Furious movies. So Fast X is officially in theaters everywhere, and this is the first part of what was supposed to be a two-part, but is now a three-part finale thanks to Vin Diesel dropping that news just last week. And as the Roman numeral-centric Fast X title suggests, this is the 10th mainline Fast and Furious movie. At this point in time, with these movies, you know exactly what you're getting into, and you're either along for the ride or you're not. And it's pretty crazy to think, and you almost have to give them credit for starting off as like a simple Point Break ripoff with street racing and turning into this global billion-dollar franchise, because it looks like Fast X is also tracking to make the big bucks. Nevertheless though, what we're here to discuss today is where does Fast X fall in line with the rest? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to find out. Before I hop into the actual ranking, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated solely to my ranking videos. There is well over 100 videos currently on that playlist, so if rankings are your thing, then be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 11, F9, The Fast Saga. Long story short, I don't like this movie at all. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that I hate it, but it is definitely the weakest in this franchise, and truly the only one that I actually don't like. All of the rest of the movies in this series, I enjoy at least to a certain degree, but this one. Sure, it has some fun action set pieces and some enjoyable moments, as well as, you know, the chemistry between the cast is definitely there because they absolutely feel like a genuine real-life family, and by all accounts, they really do behave like one off camera as well. Some of the comedy lands, some of it doesn't, but this to me is the movie where they really started to lose their identity and they weren't really sure which direction to go in, because on the one hand they're cracking jokes and there's just the most ridiculous shit imaginable happening on screen, and they actually sent them to space, which was a long-running joke and meme all over social media for years, and then they finally did it and it was awful. But then on the other hand, like John Cena and Vin Diesel in particular were taking this movie so seriously. The tone was all over the place. It didn't know which direction it wanted to go in. It didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be, and that's where it lost me, because it could have been this fun, big, bombastic adventure, but they just took some of it way too seriously, and the dialogue was horrible, and it was just all around stupid and unenjoyable in my humble opinion. It just lost a lot of the fun because some of the actors just didn't get the memo as to what this series had become. Number 10, The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift. Funny enough, there's probably going to be a fair few of you out there who really disagree with this placement, and that's totally okay because, again, truth be told, I actually enjoy this movie, and I've seen it many, many times, but the reason it ends up way down at the bottom of this list is because it feels completely and utterly pointless now. The main character appeared in one scene of Furious 7 and one scene of F9, so it makes him completely redundant. And of course, the big thing that this movie did was kill off Han, as it was revealed to be a secret sequel to the past few movies, despite being the third mainline entry. It actually ends up being a sequel to 4, 5, and 6. But then they retconned that not only once, but twice. And it just gets all muddled and becomes a huge, just bloated mess and just needlessly convoluted for what was actually a pretty solid moment in this movie. So any impact that this movie had whatsoever is completely gone. Sure, it's still an enjoyable throwback to the old days of just a straight up racing movie with a bit of crime here and there, but it just serves no purpose anymore is really the point. Number 9, Fast and Furious. This is the fourth movie in the mainline series, and it actually does have some standout moments. I love the opening sequence. I think the final chase is actually pretty exciting, but where it's really lacking is in the villain department. The villain is completely and utterly forgettable, and of course, it also retcons the big thing that happened in this movie, which was, of course, Letty's death. That also now holds no weight whatsoever, and this was also, at least for a brief period of time, a turn for the series to being a bit darker and a bit more serious, like the relationship between Dom and Brian and how they sort of reconnect in this movie. But the biggest sin that this movie commits is the fact that it's actually kind of dull and boring. Number 8. Too Fast, Too Furious. Most people will likely have this one at the very bottom of their list, and that's totally cool with me. The reason it ends up a bit higher for myself personally is that for years, and I mean years, this was my favorite one. This is the one that got me into the series as a kid. I watched this over at a friend's house on VHS, and many of you watching this might not even know what a VHS or a VCR are. But that's how I was introduced to the Fast and Furious movies, and I watched this one on repeat growing up. It was my favorite, so it's still holds a very special place in my heart. I have a ton of nostalgia for this one. Yes, it is not a great movie by any means whatsoever. I still love this one, honestly, unapologetically love it. Number 7, The Fate of the Furious. Oddly enough, this one actually used to be quite a bit higher on my list, but after multiple rewatches, it's just steadily worked its way down. I do love Charlize Theron as our villain, and this movie actually does have some consequences that, at least as of right now, have lasted throughout the few sequels that have been released since then. But again, it falls into the trap of just taking itself way too seriously and not having enough fun. So again, the tone is all over the place. It's like you're watching 2 or 3 different movies that kind of just get mixed and mashed and mushed together, and it doesn't always work. It's got some solid stuff in here, like anything to do with Hobbs and Shaw, like their prison break, for instance, which of course was so popular that it led to them getting their own spin-off. I like the final sequence on the ice. It's a lot of fun. Is it ridiculous and unbelievable? Of course, that's what these movies are known for. It has its fun moments, its big, over-the-top, goofy moments that are enjoyable, but again, it just comes down to that tone and them sometimes taking it just way too seriously, which just fully sucks you out of this movie because you just want to go and have fun. Number 6, Fast X. Yeah, honestly, I'm just as surprised as you are. Again, as you know, if you're watching this video right now, F9 is in the last place spot. Very solidly, firmly in that last place spot. I don't like that movie. So I had just very little hope for this movie. I was not anticipating it at all. I only went to do this video for the channel. I felt like I was taking one for the team. I was just simply not looking forward to this at all. The only reason that I had the slightest little glimmer of hope, and that is the main reason that I enjoyed this movie, and I knew this was going to be the case, and that was Jason Momoa as the main villain, because he stole not only every single scene he was in, but the entire movie. He made this movie fun. He was having the time of his life in this role. He was having so much fun, and that in turn made me have fun. They just openly address the ridiculousness that is this series in this movie. It feels like they are finally embracing how crazy everything is. They are finally fully embracing the just so bad it's good mentality. They draw direct attention to them, like going to space, jumping skyscraper to skyscraper, hijacking a nuclear sub, and the fact that they just started off as like petty street criminals, and now here they are today, and then family, 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 all of that is just bold-face addressed in this movie, and that's why I actually had a damn good time. It is way too long, it is overstuffed, it is bloated, the dialogue is very, very bad and not good, and it still feels like Vin Diesel is the only one taking this series serious in any way, shape, or form at all. Everyone else is just having fun. They're having a good time, and that made me have a good time. Number 5. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. This one has been bumped down on my list just a little bit because it does once again fall victim to some of the issues where the tone can at times be a little all over the place, but this one thankfully, for the most part, does tidy that stuff up. Now, this is essentially just a straight up superhero movie, like it's a comic book movie. There's literally a line addressing it where Idris Elba as the villain says that he is Black Superman, and it feels like that. Like they are just full-blown superhuman, they have super strength, super speed, super durability, they're invincible. It does feel like a superhero movie through and through, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because for the most part, aside from a few scenes here and there, this movie doesn't really take itself all that seriously, and it does just know how to make you have a good time. But the real reason that it does end up so high in this list, aside from David Leitch's direction, whom I very much so enjoy as a director, I know some people don't love his style, but I feel like the dude hits every time. But the main reason I have so much fun with this movie, and it should come as no surprise at all, but it's the main characters, the main cast, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Jason Statham, Vanessa Kirby, and Idris Elba as our villain. Those four are what save this movie, because they are just going all in on the wild, unhinged nature of this movie, and they make you enjoy it because their chemistry is so very good. Number 4, The Fast and the Furious. Yes, talk about humble beginnings. What started off as basically a Point Break ripoff, which followed an undercover cop infiltrating a gang of street racers that also work part-time as petty criminals, has now spawned multiple decades and 10 sequels and spin-offs, with more on the way. But honestly, this one ends up so high on my list because I just love to go back to the early, simple, and just harmless nature of this first movie. This movie is just so simple and so basic and so by the numbers and generic. I can't help but love it, because you go on this journey with these characters and see what they become and see what the franchise becomes, and sometimes it's nice just to touch back down to earth for a little bit and go back to the beginning of their journeys and of this just wild adventure that they've been on. So I just sometimes love to go back to the beginning of this series. Number 3, Fast and Furious 6. This one sort of acted as the turning point where this series started to veer off into the ludicrousness that it would go on to become. For the most part, it does actually stay fairly grounded. Like, there are a lot of practical effects in here. Yes, I do think that the just so convenient amnesia that Letty has is kind of stupid, but you know what? Luke Evans worked as a villain for me. It felt earned that Hobbs and Dom would have to work together, and there are a lot of massive standout sequences in here that are just a total blast. Yes, it does feature the world's longest airplane runway. Justin Lin as a director did find a lot of workarounds to make this stuff so crazy, but still very much so, rooted in reality. But it did start to take some twists and turns here and there that would lead to what we now know as the series. Nevertheless, though, this one I still enjoy. I think it did a lot of what Fast 5 did right, as well as what Furious 7 would go on to do right, while still taking some liberties in, terms of reality. Number 2, Furious 7. The question on everyone's mind is, if Paul Walker hadn't passed away, would this movie have been as good as it is? Would it have been as impactful? Truthfully, I don't know, but all I can say is that for me, this marks the end of the series. 8, 9, 10, Hobbs and Shaw, and whatever else comes are all just kind of like parodies or spin-offs in my mind, but where the mainline series really just should have ended, except it made over $1 billion, is with this 7th movie. It was the perfect finale. Yes, this is where they full-blown went into just completely unbelievable alternate reality territory where Newton's 3 laws just simply don't exist at all. But Jason Statham was a hell of a villain. This movie has a ton of heart, and it has, I would argue, one of the most iconic movie endings of the last decade. It makes me teary-eyed every single time. It is so beautiful and so touching, and it has always stuck with me. But aside from that too, yes, there is some really stupid shit in here and some really bad lines, but for the most part, the chemistry of the cast and the big, fun, dumb moments really do save it. They took a break from filming, they came back, did some rewrites, and they gifted us this just truly magnificent and heartwarming ending that really served as just such a beautiful send-off to a wonderful human being. And for that very reason, this one just holds a very, very special place in my heart as well. Number 1, Fast 5. And this was it, folks. This is where they found that balance between more dramatic and gritty storytelling and just campy, good fun. They still were doing, I think, everything practically. Even that final safe sequence, sure, there are a couple moments where they had to do CGI so they didn't, actually kill people, but the safe, when it's swinging all over the road, they just had a hollowed out fake safe with a truck driving around. Other times they just had like an actual relatively heavy safe that they were swinging around and crashing through things. And again, they did so much practically. I love the finale of this movie. It's my favorite finale of the entire franchise. It's got a ton of heart, it's got a ton of grit, and it still felt like a natural progression where it still was these characters being street racers and pulling off petty crimes, but only here they've just elevated, and this was supposed to be the last big final score of their lives where they would just be set for life afterwards, and this too could have acted as a flawless finale to the series, but again, it was well reviewed, made a ton of money, so we are where we are now. Take that as you will, but one way or the other, this one to me is where they just found the perfect balance of everything. What the series once was and what it would go on to become. This is where everything was just where it should be, and that's why I love it so much and why to this day it remains my favorite Fast and Furious movie. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, don't forget to let me know how you would have ranked all 11 of the Fast and Furious movies. If you're a movie lover whatsoever, then my channel is the place to be for you, be it rankings like this one, top 10 videos versus videos, tier videos, I have it all and so much more, with plenty of new and exciting series on the way for the channel, and well over 800 uploads currently on there for you to enjoy. So if you enjoyed this particular video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and if any of that sounds like it's right for you and you want to see more from me, then smash that subscribe button right now. While you're at it though, don't forget to ring that little bell icon, that way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.